my mic had to get muted right as I hit start. Hey, music fans, and welcome back to Sound Lab Studios. Today we are going to be continuing the top 5 album series, and this time it is going to be 1975. So, getting into the mid 70s here, and I'm very excited about this year. Lots of great albums came out this year, lots of great music, and from here on, it's just amazing year after amazing year. Not like it hasn't been before, but this is where, in my opinion, it gets really, 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 really good.
Yeah. I agree. This is a really good year of music. I was just telling Scott before the video started that 4 out of the 5 albums in my top 5 or in my top 100 albums of all time. So that should be a strong indicator of how great this year was.
Oh yeah, and if you haven't watched any of our videos before, we like to alternate 5, 5, 4, 4, 3, 3, 2, 2. Then we do honorable mentions, and then the top album of the year. So let's go ahead and get on with number 5.
My number 5 is going to be an album that I heard fairly recently. It's going to be Main Course by the Bee Gees. This was their first real dive into disco music. Saturday Night Fever was their first popular album into disco, but this is the first album of them sort of stepping into that direction. Really great songs. Night on Broadway, Drive Talking. Those are the 2 songs. Those are the first 2 songs on the album. Sets the mood off really well. Wind of Change is amazing. Songbird is really good. Fanny Be Tender with My Love is really good. Second Side is just as great. All This Making Love, Country Lanes, Edge of the Universe, Baby As You're Turned Away. Just great stuff by them. I said this a bunch of times. I do prefer the pre-disco stuff, but there's still a lot of great stuff after the the disco stuff is great in its own right. So yeah, Main Course number 5.
My number 5 is One of These Nights by the Eagles. This is probably my second favorite Eagles album, and it is absolutely amazing. Don Felder kind of taking a role on this album after they got him for a few songs on the last one. You got the title track, which is just funky and amazing. Hollywood Waltz. Then there's a really cool instrumental called the Journey of the Sorcerer, which is really great. You got some classics like Lion Eyes, Take It to the Limit, and then kind of a minor hit in After the Thrill Is Gone, and the final song, Bernie Leadon's last song, I Wish You Peace. It's a very good album. It's a mix of laid back, breezy Southern Californian rock and kind of harder rock, which is showing where the Eagles are heading with their next album, Hotel California. But one of my favorite Eagles albums and my 5th favorite album of 1975, One of These Nights.
Good choice. My number 4. So like I said, all these albums up. Part of my top 100 albums of all time. Rightfully so. So any one of these 4 is just, all 4 of these are just peak music in my opinion. It's of this year, I'd say. Number 4 will be, I mentioned this in 73, even though it was 2 years off. That's going to be the Basement Tapes by Bob Dylan. I got the year right this time. It is 75. A lot of great stuff. I love Odds and Ends. Katie's Been Gone's great. Apple Suckling Tree is really good. Too Much of Nothing's great. I prefer this version of You Ain't Going Nowhere, the one that the Byrds originally did on their Rodeo album. I prefer this version. He does the Bob Dylan's version of this Wheels on Fire is great. Just so many great songs. It's 24 songs. It's a great double album. It's him and the band, but I consider this to be like a Bob Dylan album. I'm going to be reviewing it eventually on my channel, so watch out for that.
From here up, these top 4 albums all really should be the number one album of 1975, but it's like there's just too many amazing albums. So it's kind of like number 1A, 1B, 1C, and 1D.
That's a good way of putting it. That's kind of how I feel.
My number 4 is Physical Graffiti by Led Zeppelin. The Led Zeppelin double album. Lots of different styles on this album. And they even used some outtakes from some of their other albums to kind of fill up the double album. They had a great album that they wanted to be a single album, but they said it was too long to fit on one record, so they added in the outtakes to make a double album. Some of their finest work on here, The Rover is amazing. In My Time of Dying, Trampled Underfoot, that's a really funky John Paul Jones tune. It plays kind of like the clavichord, whatever that is, kind of like Superstition by Stevie Wonder. Kashmir, probably their most epic song. In the Light is really great. 10 Years Gone, oh my goodness, 10 Years Gone is one of my favorite Led Zeppelin songs. Night Flight, the Wonton Song, Boogie with Stu, just lots of great songs on this. It's probably their most rocking album. Looking at it, their like most hard rock centric album, even though a lot of people call them heavy metal. This album is probably their most rocking album, and it is my number 4 of 1975.
I don't think Zeppelin's even close to being a heavy metal band.
No.
I
I tend to go with Robert Plant's explanation. Robert Plant once said that Led Zeppelin was the world's heaviest folk rock band.
wouldn't even consider Black Sabbath to be a heavy metal band. I consider them to be like metal, but like not even close to me, Zeppelin. But yeah, Plant's explanation's a lot better.
Yeah.
Speaking of Dylan, another album of his from this year, Blood on the Tracks. This is my second favorite Bob Dylan album. As I said, like I said already a couple of times already, this is my top 100 albums of all time. And I only heard this album once. This album is amazing. A lot of great stuff on it. Tangled Up in Blue, great opener. Buckets of Rain, great closer. Everything in between is just amazing. One person said, well, it wasn't for this album, but one person said it on the Kinks album, Something Else by the Kinks. You open up with David Watts and you end with Waterloo Sunset, and you have a lot of great stuff in between. You got yourself a great album. That's what I say about this album. You got Tangled Up in Blue and Buckets of the Rain. You got 8 other great songs in between. I don't want to go too in depth on this because I want to save all that when I review this. So I'm just gonna leave it at that.
I know a lot of people put Blood on the Tracks as their favorite Dylan album.
Well, it's my second favorite, only behind another album that I will be mentioning in the 76.
All right, my number 3 of 1975 is going to be Born to Run by the boss, Bruce Springsteen. This album is insanely good. You know you're in for a treat whenever Thunder Road starts up and you get that piano. Oh my goodness, it's so good. Night, what an amazing song. That song is great. Lots of the boss's best stuff is on here. 10th Avenue Freeze Out, Meet Across the River, Jungle Land. Man, Jungle Land is amazing. And we got to talk about the title track, Born to Run. Kind of that he's going for a different sound on this album than he was on his first 2 albums. He's going for more of a Phil Spector production kind of sound. And so a lot of people describe this album like if Phil Spector had produced a Bob Dylan album, just because of his lyrics are reminiscent of Bob Dylan and the production sounds like Phil Spector. So if you have never listened to Born to Run by Bruce Springsteen, I would definitely recommend going and listening to it. Check it out. It is an excellent entry point into the Springsteen catalog, and if you're going to just listen to one Springsteen album, that would be the one. So, Born to Run by Bruce Springsteen.
Good choice. I don't even have it as my honorable mention. Well, you're gonna be happy to hear a certain album by a certain artist that's an honorable mention here, but sadly, no Springsteen in my honorable mentions. Uh, my number two is gonna be by a band that I like quite a bit. Uh, it's gonna be The Who by Numbers. One of my favorite Who albums. Just one particular album I think is way better than this album, and that's saying a lot because it's one of my favorite Who albums. Well, we'll get into that when I get to my number one, but this album is freaking awesome. After the epic that is Quadrophenia, Townsend starts to get a little like questions everything in his life, like am I just this rock star that people only like because of my music and how popular I am, or the tracks become more introspective, definitely not as thematic as the the two albums before it, like Tommy and who Quadrophenia, like I just mentioned. um yeah um Songs like How Many Friends, Blue, Red, and Gray, uh Imagine a Man, Slip Kid, and even the And Whistle Brennan tracks, A Success Story, is
I
just
don't know what I was on about on that Who ranking. This album is better than Face Dances, and it's hard. I put
it's
It's
okay.
Hard above it in the ranking, but after re-listening to It's Hard, no.
Okay. But yeah, this is just great music. I will say Squeezebox doesn't fit the theme of this album at all, which is why I'm not as into it as the other 9 tracks. Like, I don't know how much I boo is just pretty dark. I love Dreaming from the Waist. That song rocks. I could definitely hear Rush listening to this track and being like amazed by it because I know they were big Who fans at the time, even before they made their first album. Just great musical, just all around. It's just great stuff. Love it a lot.
All right, my number two album of 1975. Another one I wish could be number one, but there's a better one of 75. That it's "Wish You Were Here" by Pink Floyd. I love this album. It is one of my favorite Pink Floyd albums. It has my favorite Pink Floyd song on it, even though I don't really signal out specific songs from Pink Floyd because I feel like with Pink Floyd, every song is just a chapter in their respective albums rather than a standalone song. But if I had to pick what was my favorite Pink Floyd song, it would be "Shine on You Crazy Diamond." And that song is insanely good. I love all of the instrumental sections on that, the guitar, the drumming, the keyboard. Like Richard Wright's synth solo is great. The saxophone, there's saxophone at the end. I really like "Welcome to the Machine." That one's cool. "Have a Cigar." It's a groovy song. Title track "Wish You Were Here" is amazing. And then "Shine on You Crazy Diamond," the second part. Or I guess part 6 through 9 if you're going to be technical, but still absolutely amazing album. It's either my favorite or my second favorite Pink Floyd album.
Even as even as someone who prefers the more psychedelic Sid Barrett stuff, I will admit China on You Crazy Diamond and Have a Cigar just
Well,
some of
it's "Shine on You Crazy Diamond" is a tribute to Sid Barrett.
yeah, well that made it better. That made me respect him more. But even without knowing that, it's just knowing that even just before that, I just think it's a great song. I think it's one of their best.
They even
Even
say
like
like "Come on You Piper, You Painter," and the Piper at the Gates of Dawn was Sid Barrett's album.
yeah, that's another album that I really enjoy. Piper. That's my favorite Pink Floyd album. Um, my honorable mentions now. Not number. Rock of the Westies by Elton John.
Yes.
Face the Music by ELO. Proud to put that in there.
I tried to put it in there, but it was either that or the Eagles.
Yeah. Still Crazy After All These Years by Paul Simon.
Oh man, that's another one I wish could have been in the top 5. It's my favorite Simon album.
Venus and Mars by Wings. Toys in the Attic by Aerosmith. Wish You Were Here by Pink Floyd, as you mentioned. A Night at the Opera by Queen. Sabotage by Black Sabbath. Fly By Night and Caress of Steel by Rush. And yeah, those are my honorable mentions.
I'm not even going to add anything to that. That kind of perfectly sums up my honorable mention list as well.
Cool. Yeah, I really wanted Caress of Steel in there, but
I know.
that was the album. That was the album that I was
Hey,
like,
just get ready though. From 76 onward, I bet you there's going to be a Rush album in my top 5 every year from now to like 82.
I mean, Rush is going to win a couple of years. I guarantee that.
Definitely.
Looking at you, 1982. I wonder which album.
Signals be crossed.
Okay, my number one is going to be the epic Physical Graffiti. This freaking album is just legendary. When I first heard this album was way long ago. I thought it was okay. I only heard the first disc, and I heard the first disc. I was so close-minded with my Zeppelin. I was like, I don't really like this. And then when I was talking to Scott, I was like, yeah, I'm not a fan of this. It was like my second least favorite. I always put Presence as the least best Zeppelin album, even then. But Physical Graffiti was second last. Now it's my favorite Zeppelin album. I mean, it beat out Who by numbers, so that should tell you something. If a Who fan, if my favorite band is going to be beaten by Zeppelin, well, I'll go by each side in each song. Side one, Custard Pie, one of my favorite openers. I love his Plant's singing in this is just epic. Chewing a piece of your custard pie. He's just, that lyric gets stuck in my head every time I listen to it. It's just good stuff. Second track, The Rover, which was Houses of the Holy outtake. It's funny, the Houses of the Holy outtakes are some of my favorite Zeppelin songs.
There's also Walter's Walk from Coda was also a Houses of the Holy outtake.
Just everything that they were recording for House of the Holy at the time were just peak. Like this album and House of the Holy, they were just at their peak in creativity. In My Time of Dying, epic 11-minute I was gonna say instrumental. I'm so tired. I'm so out of it. 11 epic minute blues track. Doesn't get boring at all. I'm gonna skip over side 2 for last. That I like to talk about that side last. Side 3, In the Light, my favorite Zeppelin song. It's just, as Scott mentioned about Kashmir, it's just epic with the synth leads. This was just Richard. This was just John Paul Jones flexing his keyboard muscles on this track. When I first heard this track, I'm like, this blew my mind. Really did. Bron Yor R, really good instrumental after that. Like a nice little like relaxation after all that madness. Down by the Seaside.
I forgot to talk about that one.
That was a Zeppelin 4 outtake, and Bron Yor R was a Zeppelin 3 outtake. 10 Years Gone, recorded for this album. Great stuff. I agree. I think it's one of their most underrated songs. Night Flight on the fourth side was an outtake from their fourth album. I feel like if they use the 4 outtakes on Zeppelin 4, that album would be a lot higher on my list.
Swap out Battle of Evermore with Night Flight and swap out 4 Sticks with Down by the Seaside, or either way. But
well, my idea of a perfect Zeppelin 4 might be different from your perfect Led Zeppelin 4, but Night Flight, either way, Night Flight should have been on the album. I mean, it's on my favorite Zeppelin album, so what am I to complain? Stop, Nick. Stop complaining. The Wadden song, I don't even have to go into that. That's just listen to it. Just listen to the Godstar track. Boogie with Stu, another great take from Zeppelin 4. me. Come on. Black Country Woman, great outtake from House of the Holy. Great stuff. It definitely wouldn't have fit the nature of House of the Holy if it was released on that album. So I'm glad it's not on that album. It sounds more of like a Led Zeppelin 3 outtake than a House of the Holy outtake, if you ask me. Sick Again, great closer. Not one of my favorite closers by them. If When the Levee Breaks was the closer of this album, this would be a lot. This album would be one of my. This would be really high on my albums list if that song was the closer. And I haven't even discussed the best part of the album yet. Side freaking 2. House of the Holy. I know I love Dancing Days. That's my third favorite song on House of the Holy. But come on, you think this is the weaker of the 2 tracks? You kidding me? This song's better than Dancing Days, in my opinion. Some Zeppelin fans could be pissed right now for me saying that.
I like Dancing Days better.
Okay, well, there's gonna be some person who's gonna be pissed. He's gonna be like, "You think that's better than this?" Blasphemy, but. Trampled Underfoot, I agree, great song. Kashmir closes out the first disc beautifully. It leaves you out with the great feeling inside after the end.
With those John Bonham drum rolls with the phasing on it.
I love the synthesizer and because most of it isn't orchestrated. Most of it's yet again. John Paul Jones being John Paul Jones. This is some of John Paul Jones's best stuff. This and In Through the Outdoors, him at his finest as a Zeppelin member, in my humble opinion. Yes. Yeah, this album just rocks.
And No Quarter.
And No Quarter, I agree. But yeah, this album is just
and like, the right song.
Scott just mentioned it. This album just rocks. Just a solid, great rock album. Everything's great on it. Not a second wasted, in my opinion. I will always be proud to say this is my favorite Zeppelin album. It's just like, to me, it's flawless. It's great.
My number 1 album of 1975 is A Night at the Opera by Queen. This album is epic. I love like pretty much every song on this album, even the ones that are weaker. Starting off with Death on Two Legs, you just hear like that like moody piano, and then it just comes in and hits you. Oh my goodness, it's so good. It's a diss track at their manager. Okay, well, maybe there's one song I don't like as much, and that's I'm in Love with My Car. I don't really like that one as much, but it's kind of a funny story of what Roger Taylor did with that song, and I'm going to save that for whenever we do the Night at the Opera review. Since we're doing the Night at the Opera review very soon, I'm just going to keep my thoughts brief for the rest of the album, but 39, insanely good. The Prophet song, Love of My Life. It's just got so many great songs on here. You're My Best Friend, and of course, Bohemian Rhapsody. And so, number 1 of 1975 for me had to be Night at the Opera. It's also my 9th favorite album of all time. It's in my top 10 favorite albums of all time. So,
well, yeah. I so far my top 10 albums, pretty happy with them right now, but I would go over them, but
we want to save that for your series.
Yes.
So thank you guys for watching our top 5 albums of 1975. We will see you next time whenever we go through the 200th birthday of America, 1976. Until then, music is art and art is expression. See you later.